the man who had received the 1 talent came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your talent in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. His master replied, You wicked, lazy servant. So, you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. In other words, that's the least you could have done. If you weren't willing to work, you could have at least done that. Verse 28. Take the talent from him and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. For everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's an intense parable, isn't it? The master invests each person with a certain amount of money. He invests in them. And then the master expects a return on his investment. Let me ask you this. What talents has God given you? Now, like I said earlier, nowadays we think of a talent as being in regard to a skill, a natural-born ability, a natural-born aptitude. Okay, well, what's your talents? What has God invested in you? What are you doing with them? Now, there are all sorts of things that we could pull out of this parable, and in a previous sermon a couple of years ago, I really spent some time unpacking, especially the end of this parable. We don't have time to do that today. But the main thing I wanted us to notice in the parable was, which is actually, I believe, the main point of the parable, is this. To take what God has invested in you and do nothing with it is evil. To take what God has invested in you and do nothing with it is evil. You say, well, how's that evil? God has invested certain skills and abilities in me. There are all sorts of things that I've got I did not give myself. Now, I've tried to develop these things, but I didn't give these skills and these abilities to myself. If I act like that all of these things, these resources and skills and abilities that God has given me, if I act like they are mine to do with as I choose, I'm wrong. If I do that, I say, well, I'll just do whatever I want with my life, with my skills, with my abilities, then who is the God of my life? It's me. But the Bible teaches that everything, in the Psalms it says the earth and everything in it belongs to the Lord. Did you know that you belong to God, whether you worship Him or not? Whether you're a Christian or not? You belong to God. I belong to God. I didn't create myself. These talents and abilities and skills that I've got, I didn't give them to me. They didn't come from me. How can I be so sure that they belong to me? Well, what about the talents and the skills and the abilities that you have? You didn't give them to yourself. Now, we may work hard to develop them, but that raw potential did not come from you. You didn't create yourself. You didn't cause yourself to be born. We belong to God. God created us, and God has invested in us. And so, if we live in such a way that, no, I belong to myself, God, I am the God of my life, I will call the shots, I will determine what I do and do not do with what you've invested in me, Jesus refers to that as wicked or evil. God has invested in us. God did not create us to be couch potatoes. God created us for action. He did not create us to be passive. In James 2:26 we read this, as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead. As the body without the spirit is dead, all you've got is a material shell without the spirit. So faith without deeds, beliefs without a life of action that backs it up, it's empty, it's dead, it's useless, it's lifeless. Guys, what are you doing with what God has invested in you? What are you doing with the life that's been given to you? How are you engaged in serving God? What are you doing to advance His kingdom? What are you doing to be an active part of His church, His people, the body of Christ? Now, I suppose you might say, but Kevin, serving in church, I can't speak in front of large groups, and, I don't sing well, I'm not a musician. What can I do? Guys, what you see happening on the platform here on any given Sunday morning, this is an important part of the life of God's people. This is an important part of the life of the church. But guys, this is just one facet in a multifaceted body of Christ. This is just the smallest sliver of what God's up to in the world. There's so much more. If you are a follower of Jesus, then you are part of the body of Christ, and Christ is working in this world in all sorts of ways. All sorts of ways. God doesn't do anything just for the heck of it, and that includes creating you. That includes the talents, the gifts, the abilities that you have, that I have. He didn't give it to you just for the heck of it. He gave it to you for a purpose. And that purpose it's bigger. The stuff that He gave to me is bigger than me. He gave it to me so that it could be used to bless you and other people. The talents and abilities that have been given to you, it's bigger than you. It's been given not just to bless you, but to bless others. For the church to be the church, we don't just need preachers and musicians. We need all sorts of folks. In your bulletin, you may notice that there is this bright green insert. Can you see this? Some of it's a different color, I noticed. Some of it's pink. Take a look at this insert. On one side it says, engage in the ministries of Berea Baptist Church. For the church to be the church, we need more than preachers and musicians. We need people engaged in audiovisual ministry. We enjoyed the fruits of some of their labors this morning. The Berea Health Ministry, helping people in regard to getting adequate medical care. Church grounds and maintenance ministry. Somebody's got to take care of this place. Somebody needs to have handyman skills. College student visitation ministry. Deaf ministry. Disaster relief ministry. Fellowship ministry. These events where we get together, picnics, stuff like that, somebody's got to put that together. Funeral meal ministry. Helping Hands ministry. That's a ministry one of our members does where on Saturdays at lunch, this person cooks a big bunch of food and helps deliver it to all sorts of people out in the community, shut-ins and widows, people that need some help. They need people helping to prepare the food, people helping to carry the food, make the runs in the cars there. Humanitarian ministry. Our humanitarian ministry, we have a kicking humanitarian ministry here at Berea Baptist Church. Just since the beginning of this year, our humanitarian ministry has assisted 160-some families. I believe it's 166 families in regard to utility and rent relief. And we've helped over 260 families receive food from our food bank. That's just since the beginning of the year. International student ministry, reaching out to the students who've come from all over the world. Kids Zone, our sweet, precious little ones that every Sunday morning they march up on the second floor to the Kids Zone room, and then they experience church on a level that they can understand. And we need people that love them enough to help out with that in all sorts of ways. Kitchen ministry. You wouldn't think of things like this. We need people who are just committed to keeping the kitchen maintained and stocked and supplied. Library ministry. Men's ministry. Mission Friends. That's the Wednesday night children's program, teaching children about God. Missions ministry. Nursery and preschool ministry. Life group Bible study ministry. That's Sunday school. That's home-based small groups. We need people who are willing to help out in all sorts of different ways, teachers and other folks. Usher ministry. Vacation Bible school. That one's coming up in a little over a month. Van ministry. How simple can it get? All you got to be able to do is just drive the van and go pick up some kids and bring them to church. And